Let's get started. So, hello everyone. My name is Gavin Reddick. I am the Chief Analyst here at ResearchFish. And today I'm going to be talking about how to get data out of ResearchFish following the most recent set of submission periods, particularly in the context of the UK. So today we'll be going to look at the platform, how to get the data out, some important concepts to think about when you're doing it, and we'll actually have a look at some of the data and see how things go. We always do this webinar at the end of the UK and Danish submission periods. And if you have any questions along the way, please let us know. I'm going to get started. I introduced myself. I should actually also introduce my colleague. Just want to say hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Alexandra Pankara. I'm Customer Success Manager here at ResearchFish, and I will be helping Gavin in case you will have any questions. I will monitor them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alexandra. So I'm going to start off. I'm already logged into ResearchFish, and so I'm going to share my screen. And you can see here, I should say that all of the data we'll be seeing today is going to be test data. Because I'm both an administrator, in this case for the Interfolio Foundation, and I also have some test awards. I can see both because an administrator can, in fact, wear those two hats. For an organization, all of the activity is going to take place down here on the eval section, which is the organizational administrative section of ResearchFish, though we are going to come back to the My Downloads, which is personal to me. So eval is all about my organization. The bit above here is all about me. And the My Downloads are going to be when I'm exporting the data from ResearchFish. This is where they're going to appear. So when we look in ResearchFish and want to get data out, the obvious place to go, in this case, the correct place to go, is the export. So here, we're going to have a few different options, and the precise options that you will see will vary a little bit depending on what kind of an institutional admin are you. So funders get slightly different options available to research organizations, for example. But you can see here, we've got right on the top of the page, we've got three different options. And we've got some default things that are already set. And so the first thing here is the submission period, or probably more correctly, the time concept of the award. So we're going to export some data. We need to specify which data we want to get out of it. And one big part of that is what time slice of data we're going to look at. You can see here the default is the most recently submitted. So most recently submitted is a particular concept that applies to each award individually. In my case, I'm set up as a funding organization. And what this isn't, or what this doesn't do, is it doesn't give me the most recent submission period. What this does give me is for all of my awards, the most recently submitted version of those awards. So it could be that award number 1 has in fact submitted this week. Maybe award number 2 hasn't submitted this year, but did submit last year. If I select the most recently submitted option, I would have from award 1, what was submitted last week, and from award 2, what was submitted last year. And the reason is this gives me the most up-to-date set of signed off data from researchers across the data that I control. So that's the most recently submitted concept. But I do have some options. So here you can see, because I'm a funder, I can choose live data. And so live data is all of the information that I have as of this second in ResearchFish. So in the example that I gave a moment ago, we had somebody who has submitted last week and somebody who has submitted a year ago. But perhaps that person that submitted a year ago has in fact been in and active and has added a number of outputs to their award, but they haven't clicked the submit button. So that new data would not appear in the most recently submitted version, but would appear in the live data. Similarly, if I previously, or if that person previously reported an output and then subsequently disattributed it, so took it off the award, said it didn't relate to it, that change to remove it wouldn't be reflected in the submitted data because that was the signed off version that the researcher submitted, but it would be reflected in the live data. So live data can be really quite handy about understanding the current live situation, but it's challenging because it can change minute by minute. So if you were to download that data and to do an analysis and download the data again a little while later, you'll get different numbers, you'll see different things potentially. But also that hasn't been fully signed off as being accurate and complete at this point in time, which is what happens when a researcher clicks that submit button. So you need to be a bit more cautious about reusing that information. So we've covered sort of the default that people tend to use, which is the most recently submitted version of all of your data across all of your awards. The live data, which is everything as it is right now, but you could also select just those things that submitted as part of whichever submission period it was. And this can be useful if you want to understand only those things that were submitted as part of that period. But in the example that I gave, to go back to the person who submitted last year and the person who just submitted last week in a different submission period, if we just looked at this year's submission period, it would include the person who submitted last week, but it would not include any information about the person who submitted last year but hasn't clicked submit as part of this current submission period. So it's only those people that click submit in that particular submission period. So there can be some reasons why you would want to look at just that time slice, but you should be aware that it would exclude anybody that didn't click submit previously. So that's typically why the most recently submitted time concept is the one that people want to focus on. So those are the three different time concepts. In this case, I'm going to select live data. So once we've selected our time slice, we now need to select our export type. And so the default here is the award details RHT. So this will give me all of the information on all of the awards. So who is the PI, what their dates are, any custom categories, any information about whether they've submitted or not, what submission period they were entered into, all of the things at the level of the award. But if we click here, we see that we can also select some other types of exports. And so you can see here the common outcomes. So artistic and creative products, awards and recognition, collaborations and partnerships. So publications, research datasets, database models. So if I wanted to understand the detail about what were those things that were submitted in these particular sections, this is where I would select. And if you see a little bit further down, and this depends on what data you have, if you're a funding organization, you may have created an additional question, so outside of the common outcomes, in which case you could also select that as well. And then finally, we have some extra data on the collaborations and partnerships. So when a researcher reports a collaboration, there can be a single collaboration with multiple collaborators. If you select this, you will only get the information about the collaborators, but not the information about the collaboration. So it's typically less useful. But if you select the collaborations and partnerships export up here, you would get all of the data on the collaborations and the collaborators. And so if a collaboration had 3 partners, it would appear on 3 rows, essentially, with some common data across those 3 rows relating to the high-level collaboration and unique data on each row relating to the specific collaborator across those 3 rows. So I am going to select the publications export. So you can see now I've selected the export type. I now have an additional option here. So when it's awards, this option doesn't apply. But if I'm looking at the exports, I've got some options. So the default is entries with award details. So this will show me what was reported, sort of the common outputs, in this case, the publications, and it will show me the information about who it was that's reported them. So which awards are those particular publications attributed to? And that's the default option, and that's what most people would want. There is an additional option you can see here, which is research entries with award details and funder or research organization specific categories. So depending on your organization, you may have chosen to set up some data in ResearchFish to help you classify the awards that you have. So it could be an extra category, or it could be even a node that gives access to schools or departments, for example, or collects things by scheme or call, or might have some additional metadata about them. In the default option, these will not appear, but if you select to add the funder research organization specific categories, then this will appear in the export as well. In this case, and then finally, there is also entries without any award details, which is typically less useful. And so this looks at just, in this case, the publications, but it wouldn't tell you which awards have reported those publications. But you can do that as well. So we're going to go with entries with award details. Now, again, as we're talking about the collaborations and collaborators, an entry with award details export might have the same publication attributed to more than one award. In this case, the export would appear on as many rows as there are attributions to those awards. So you'll have information on award 1, award 2, award 3, and publication A, and publication A, and publication A. So the difference, each combination will be unique at the level of the attribution to the publication, to the award, but you may get duplication of the publication information if the same publication is attributed to more than one award. And then finally, you could choose to limit the export to just particular research organizations or particular funders, but generally speaking, that's not such a useful export there. So what we're going to do is we're going to export that now. So we're going to do publications. And then you can see here, the download is being queued and will process shortly. Once complete, you'll be able to find it in the My Downloads page of ResearchFish, which again is over here on the left-hand side. So at this point, I could actually go away, leave the computer, shut down. I don't need to be on screen. I don't need to refresh anything. I don't need to check. What happens is when you click that button, the request goes into a queue. That queue is emptied out every 2 minutes or so. And then that starts to get processed. So there'll be a period of time before the record is, the request is dealt with. And then once the request is queued, the actual output will be generated, which might take a little bit of time as well. And then it'll appear in the My Download section. So depends a little bit about overall activity, but usually that export will be there in a couple of minutes or so. I'm going to do another export while we're here. I'm going to download the live data of the award details RHT. And I'm also going to do live data, and I'm going to do, let's do collaborations and partnerships, since we were talking about that. So we've got 3 different downloads queuing right now. If I wanted to, I can go here and I can see all of the exports that I've previously done. And if I wanted to, I can actually download them again. or I could go and delete exports that I've currently done in my queue as well. So I could remove them. So I could download today's data. I can go off and do things with it. I might realize, oh, I've made a mistake, and I can always go back and re-download that file and get back to the original data that I had. As this is in the queue, you can see this is pending. And so I can refresh the page. In this case, none of them are actually processed yet. But I can also go away from this page. So I'm going to go to the awards tab. When that is ready, you would see a little indicator on the My Downloads, which would be a little number in a circle, which would indicate how many exports are ready. And so again, I could go away and come back, and that would be fine. Because this is a live demo, things always seem to take a little bit longer, but this should be there momentarily, and we can open them up and have a look at the data. I'm just going to close this message down. So that's just a system message up there for right now. And okay, so I've refreshed the page, and you can see two of them already. The other one will be there any second, maybe any minute. So let's go and download and look at the first output. So I'm going to download over here, and then I'm going to open this up. And so right away, you should be able to see there's actually quite a lot of data. It's pretty well structured. It comes out in an XLSX format. Personally, to make it easier to read, I always put that into an Excel table, which gives you sorting, filtering, and I have by default the different colored rows, which just makes it a little bit easier to read across. And we'll talk through some of the features of this export, and you'll see some commonality across them as we go through. So you can see here which funding organization, which funder it is. I'm one funder, so I only have one of these, which is going to be my organization, unless I had some co-funded awards, when it could be someone else in there as well. Got the award reference. And then we've got information about the award, so the type, the name of the award, the discipline, the ID, the ResearchFish ID for the research organization, so the university. And then we have lots of information about the award. So when did it start, finish, what was the value, what was it, the currency conversion, the RFUID, so which is the internal ID for the person. In this case, we've got the PI ID, which is the funder's ID for the person. We might have the ORCID for the award holder. If they have entered it, we've got their title, their name, their surname, and their email. We've also got the response code, so which can indicate, essentially, as you can see here, whether it's a test or whether it's a particular response code. You can see if the researcher has accepted an invitation. And so you'll see that where there isn't a ResearchFish UID, it's blank. Where there is a ResearchFish UID in there, it shows they've accepted the invitation. So that's connecting the PI record with a ResearchFish record. You can see when the PI has last accessed ResearchFish, and you can see some information here on the submission period that they were entered into most recently. When was the start and end of that submission period? When was the last date they submitted? Was it currently in the submission? Is it currently in the submission period? Did they submit as part of the most recent submission period? And we've got the late summary, the technical abstract. We've got some classifications. So those are the custom funder classifications that I mentioned. We've got some reporting nodes and additional question assignments, along with the sharing status of them. So you can see there's quite a lot of data. It's well structured export, very clean from that perspective. And because we have lots of columns, all of these exports have over here field descriptions tab, which goes through the columns in order. So starting from what would be on A on the previous page to B, C, D, and so on. And you can see the description around them. So the grant DOI and the description is the DOI identifier for this award if the funder has put it in. You can see here, theme is the theme for research, which is an optional funder-specific category. So you can see information. So the names aren't always intuitive, and so we always have that second tab, which includes the description. Are there any questions on the export side of things or with the first spreadsheet that we've looked at? Sorry, I should maybe have paused a little bit earlier as well.
Gavin, there was one question, but I've already replied via chat. So if you can check it, that would be great.
Yeah. So as a research organization admin, which I suspect you might be, you have access to the submitted, because each funder can have lots of different submission periods, and each research organization can have awards from lots of different funders. Rather than giving you those, if you had, say, 10 funders and each of those funders had 15 submission periods, that gets quite unwieldy. So the default there is usually to the most recently submitted across them. So you don't have that final level, but you do have that most recent sign-off perspective. So yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. So that's the information on the RHT. I go back. Sorry, I've got lots of different tabs open, sorry. So you can see here the example of the one there, which is going to be the publications. So we've looked at the RHT level data. We're going to look now at the publications. So we're going to export it again. So we're going to download, see it appear up here. I'm going to open it, and then you'll see a lot of similarities across all of the exports in ResearchFish. So again, we're going to turn this into a table just to make it a little bit easier. And what you can see is a few different things. So before we were looking just at the awards, now we're looking at, in this case, the publications. So the entries, the outputs that people are reporting. And so I draw your attention to sort of the high level layout of the export, which is that on the left-hand side of the export, you have information on the awards. So you can see it's very similar to the data we just looked at on the awards export. And on the right-hand side, we have information about the publications themselves. And so that's the high-level distinction. And you'll see the dividing line is the entry ID, which is the unique ID of this particular entry in ResearchFish, which is a system-generated field. So you can see on the left, we have information on the awards. And you can see here one of my test awards. My information on this particular award is appearing on two different rows. And the reason for this is that I have reported two different publications. And so on the left-hand side, you will see an award appear as many times as there are publications in this case, whereas the combination of the award and the publication should only appear once. So depending on what kind of account you're doing, you need to take that into consideration. We'll talk a little bit about deduplication shortly, but that's a really important concept. So the left-hand side, the awards, the right-hand side, the publications, and the combination of the two is what makes the row unique. So we talked a fair bit about the award level data, and as I said, it's very similar to what we just looked at. On the right-hand side, you'll see information that is specific to the publication export. So we have the entry ID, we have the entry insert date, which is when this particular output was added to this particular award. We've got information on the type, so you can see what type of publication it is. And then we have IDs, so PubMed IDs, DOIs, author, first author, other authors, publication name, journal, if it's journal, volume issue pages. You might see some information on chapters, if it's a book chapter, or some information on the book, if it's a book. And then you go into, in this case, lots of different IDs. So we have ISSNs of print, digital, and linking. We've got ISBNs of the book and the electronic version. We have IDs that correspond to different databases that we get information from. So you can see an Inspire HEP ID, a Scopus document ID, a Web of Science ID. What we do is we have a record, a publication in this case, that has IDs across multiple types. So you can see for this particular publication that we're looking at right now in row 2, we have a PubMed ID, a DOI, we have ISSN print, digital, and linking. We have a Web of Science ID, the Scopus document ID, and we could have some of these other IDs, but just not in this particular one. And so in ResearchFish, people can report outcomes through lots of different routes. So I could have reported that using a PubMed lookup, a Crossref lookup, a DataCite lookup, or a Science lookup, a Scopus lookup, or in fact, my university could have uploaded it on my behalf, or it could have come via the ORCID integration if I've connected it, or it could come from an acknowledgement that I've given in the paper. So there's lots of different routes coming from lots of different places. And in ResearchFish, what we do is we create a super rich metadata object of that publication to bring together those different IDs and data from multiple sources so that it wouldn't matter if Alexandra reported the same publication as I have from Scopus and I've reported it through Crossref. It actually will end up with the same IDs in the same structure so we can understand it's the same publication more easily. And in ResearchFish, this data is tracked in this part of the export here. So we can see information on the provenance of the record. So where did it come from? How was the metadata built and when was it built? So you can see here a preloaded publication source. So in this case, the university has uploaded the publication on the behalf of the researcher, and so it indicates this in that record. You might also see Crossref or PubMed or some other source if it was acknowledged that it's arisen from that harvesting from that source. So it's either the RO has pushed it in or we have pulled it via harvesting. You can see here in the original source column where the record was created from. So the original metadata for the record, in this case, came from Crossref. And this went through this process of metadata enrichment. And actually, the bibliographic information here is coming from PubMed currently. So it's been promoted from a Crossref record to a PubMed record. And that will be the same across all the different routes that this same publication is going to be reported. So it all arrives at the same metadata. And finally, and very importantly for deduplication, so we've already mentioned that publications can have many different sources. And because of this, it has many different IDs. And so rather than you having to manage that and understand that this publication has a Crossref DOI, this one has a DOI, but also a PubMed ID and all those different combinations, the enrichment sort of gets us away from that to a single version, but we still have lots of IDs. The pub ID becomes the best way of understanding the unique publication in ResearchFish, because no matter where it was reported from, no matter when it was reported, when it was submitted, the same publication will always have the same pub ID and source, which is where it currently comes from. So you can use the pub ID field to deduplicate, and you should be able to find that there. Now, this process of metadata enrichment that we do happens when the record is created, but also periodically. And so roughly once every 2 months, we refresh the metadata of all of the different records in ResearchFish. And so we go through and you'll see that captured, and I should say this is test data. In this field, we have called autosync. So this is the last time a refresh was attempted. And then we have auto-sync success, which is the last time it was successful. So you know when this metadata was last refreshed, because the metadata may change over time. And we'll see some examples of that in a second when we move on to the open access elements. So this sort of control set of information is really important to understand uniqueness, to understand data provenance, to understand some of the interoperability. And this section sort of lives over here in those fields. For publications specifically, we also have a lot of information on open access and the open access status of the publication. So open access is quite complicated. There are lots of different ways of looking, lots of different items to consider. And so we can see here some information from PubMed Central. So when the article was available, when it was accepted, what the manuscript ID is, which would indicate that it is a green open access article in PubMed. Then you can see some categorization that's applied by Europe PubMed Central. So is it open access? So is it unambiguously CC BY or equivalent? Is it in Europe PubMed Central? Is it in PubMed Central? There. Next, so via OpenAIRE, we're able to connect up with a lot of different institutional repositories. And so this includes that information on the type in OpenAIRE, the asserted license. So you can see there, in this case, we've got closed access, embargo, open access, restricted, unspecified. Next, we have the host name. So you can see, for example, this is 3Biotech. This is Aalborg University Research Portal. This is a number of different journals. There's Apollo. So there's lots of different sources that pool up into there and make assertions around open access. We reflect, there's a concept in OpenAIRE called the best record, which is the most complete, the highest level around that. And that's what gets reflected here. And so you can see that this is being asserted as open access. In this case, from pharmacology research perspectives, and this is the link to the full text. If there's an embargo date that's noted, there it is, and this is when that record was last updated. And then over here, we have information of an equivalent sort from Crossref. So again, embargo dates, licenses for the version of record, the text and data mining license, the author accepted manuscript license, and the embargo delay if one is relevant there. And then finally, we have some citation level information, which is whether or not it is cited in any policy documents, and if so, how many, if it's cited in any patents, and a link to the Plumex URL where you could go and find out more information about those policy document citations as well. So you can see there's a lot of information there. We're all the way over now in the column CV. And because there are lots of columns there and lots of descriptions, as I said, we have this tab that goes through and we'll give a description of each of those fields. So you'll be able to understand, hopefully, what's there. Any questions about that, the publication export? No. And then finally, so publications are very well understood. There's lots of metadata, but I want to show you one thing when we look at the collaborations and partnership section. So this is another output type. And again, what you should see from this is the structure is now, at this point, very familiar. So we have all of the information on the award on the left-hand side, all of the IDs, all of the information. And then on the right-hand side, we have all of the information about the outputs, in this case, the collaboration. So we don't need to worry about the left-hand side. All the rules still apply. So you can see my award is on 3 rows here. And so we have 3 collaborations reported. And so you can see here, we've got the entry ID, and everything to the right of that is going to be about the output themselves, in this case, the collaboration. You can see there are some fields, other fields that we're interested in that are the same, that are these metadata like the entry insert date, so when this was reported. And then we can see information that's particular to the output. So we've got the collaboration name, the ID of the organization, so the unique ID in ResearchFish, of the parent organization, the parent organization name, the child organization. So in this case, it was a child of the Utrecht University, the sector, the country code, the country name, the city, the region, the ROR ID, if one's available, the organization URL. And because this is a collaboration and we have a few sections that make use of the locations data, you can also see the status. So in this case, it was resolved by the user. This one here is unresolved. It has insufficient information, so there's not enough for our team to be able to work out where it is, and the user wasn't able to find it in the existing database. Here, we've got something that was resolved and cleaned. So the user wasn't able to find the location, but we were able to add it afterwards. So that's just how you understand, again, some of the data provenance. And then you've got some more fields that relate to the specific collaboration. So was there financial contribution? If so, how much? What was the PI contribution, the partner contribution, and a number of other different metadata fields that relate to the collaboration. And then, as with before, we have all the column names and the descriptions. So again, just to let you know that these features of the exports are very common. So when you're doing these exports, you should be able to see these same patterns and help you use that data better. Okay. So at this point, we've gone through how to export, how to make the selections of the type of export that we're interested in, how to download them, where to find them from, and with each of those exports, how to open them, make them a little bit easier to read, and to be able to understand the setup between some of the key metadata items, the basic structure of the spreadsheets, and to understand that the field definitions should be part of all of the exports. So hopefully that's quite useful in terms of getting the data out and being able to use it. So in terms of today, I'm going to pause there and see, are there any questions from anyone? Any questions or any comments? So not seeing any. So in terms of getting data out, so extracting the data, we've pretty much covered what you would do to get that export and to use it. There are some different options of getting the data out of ResearchFish, again, depending on the type of organization you are. So you can potentially make use of the API. There's also a reporting database. But yeah, so those are the options, but this is the main set of data information on how to get the data out, and hopefully to help you make use of the data for your own purposes as well. If there aren't any questions, then I think we can probably wrap up for the day. So going once, going twice, going 3 times. That's I think we'll call it for the day. You're welcome. All right. Okay, well, I hope everyone found that useful. If when you come to look at your own data, you do have any questions, if you're unsure about anything, please let us know. I or my team are always happy to help with some of the finer points of the data extraction and use. And Alexandra and the customer success team are always there along with our support team to help with any issues or queries that you might have. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a great day, and thank you very much for joining, and I shall see you later. Thank you.